Hi class, it's Jessica Jacobs again. Just continuing on the demo exercises 2 file, just to show you some more functions, and I'll get into a little bit more intermediate functions here. And I am now on worksheet shoe analysis. So on the same demo exercises 2 file, the sheet shoe analysis. So again, I'm just going to do the sum function, then add in a couple other basic functions here. So if I wanted to add up, this is a scenario where we have a shoe company and there's different components of each shoe, and then we have 3 types of shoes. So on the left you have the components of the shoe, and then across on the columns an original shoe, a leather shoe, and a high-top shoe. We want to add up the material costs of each. So I have this row 13 for materials total. If I start typing equals sum, and then I can click and drag and highlight those, and then hit enter, and so then I have this range sum of B5 to B12, and it's $50 here. Notice I got this little green triangle here with a warning that says formula refers to empty cells, and so that's because these cells in the middle here don't have anything in them. If I were to put zeros in those cells, you'll see that little green warning goes away. So it's not necessarily something that you can't have. It's green, it's sort of saying, hey, heads up, but it's not red, meaning there's an error here. There just might be an error. So let's say I want to copy this across. Again, I can autofill this. Now that I have that one sum function in there, I can autofill it. And notice again, Excel will copy this relative. It's relative cell referencing. So here I have sum of B5 to B12. When it copied to the next cell, see how it says sum of C5 to C12. So Excel is thinking, I assume you now want to total these instead of those, and so we're going to copy those relative and then move that from B to C. Notice again I have that little green one here because there are some blank cells. So again, I could say ignore the error, or just to keep things tidier, I'm just going to add some zeros there. Averages. So now we're going to add in a couple other functions. Again, there's sort of 5 basic functions: sum, average, count, max, and min. So let's say I wanted to get the average cost of the leather here. So I'm going to go over here under averages and say equals, and I can start typing AV. And again, Excel populates this. I'm going to click on average, and it gives me the syntax of what I want to do. I could do a range here. I could click and drag, or I could actually click the cell and then type comma. And so if I don't do a range, you would just separate things with the comma. On this scenario, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other, whether I do a range or just the 3 in a row. It doesn't take too long. And then I can hit enter, and then I can copy that down to get averages for all of them. Now notice some of these are really long. I can format this number, this up and down decimal arrow here in the ribbon. I can go down and format those. Or remember, actually, these are all currency, so I'm going to click and drag and highlight all of those and format them to currency. And that'll automatically put 2 decimal points in there. So just a few other functions here. The count function basically counts up how many items are in a cell. And so there's count, and then count A. Count function just counts any cells with numbers in them. So if I type equals count, and you can see there's several different varieties of counting. I do count, and then I'm going to highlight all of the components. I'm going to make sure not to include the total here, but I'm just going to click and drag and count up all of the components. Now here it's kind of easy to eyeball how many there are, but let's say you had a very long list. This would be a very useful function to count up how many items are in that list. Hit enter, and it tells me there are 8. Max and min, pretty self-explanatory. If I type equals mi, and then you can see there's a min, and again I could use this drop down up there as well if I want. I want to do the minimum cost components. So I'm going to do the same thing I just did with the counting up the components, but now I want to know the minimum cost there. And it turns out it's 0 because there are some items that don't cost anything. The max, I can type equals max and highlight that same range. 2443, the leather is the highest. And then again, the average, if I wanted to average those out, I could do that. And I could copy those across as well to all 3 varieties there. So that's just basic count, max, min, and average on that sheet. If I click on this next function sheet, now this is pretty similar to the homework. There's a different homework assignment, but it's very similar, using a similar function. So if you want to review that, this is the sheet to look at. So what we have here is a list of students in a classroom. We're going to do a basic formula calculation and then do a little bit more advanced functions with the sum if and average if functions here. So first thing I want to do is just calculate. I need to get the total number of inches of the height of each student. So I'm just going to do a basic formula here. And again, just always think about whether you really need a function or you can just use a formula. You don't always need to use a function. So we know that there are 12 inches in a foot. So we have 5 feet, 7 inches. So I just need to do equals 5 feet, but I'm clicking on the cell address so that I can copy this formula down, times 12 plus however many inches that person is. Now keep in mind the order of operations. If you guys remember PEMDAS from elementary school, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. That's the order that any formula gets done in. So here it will actually do this multiplication first, and then it will add in the inches, which is what we want. Hit enter, 67, looks good. And now I can just auto-fill those down, and this is again the beauty of Excel. Boom, I did them all. So now that I have those, at the bottom it's asking several questions, and we're going to use functions to answer all of these questions. It says how many students are there, how many students are male, how many are female. So how many students are there? We can use the count function here. So I type equals count. Remember that count counts numbers. Count A actually counts cells with text. So since this counts numbers, I can't select like the students' names, but I can select cells with numbers in them. So each student has a height number. So I'm going to select all of those. The count A function, if I were to use that, I could select their names. If I hit enter, it says there are 18 students. That looks about right. So now how many students are male and how many are female? And now we get into the count if function. And I should add count if up top there. So if I type equals count and then choose count if, look at the syntax here. It says range, comma, criteria. So basically the range, it's saying what cells do you want to count, and then, so what range of cells, and then what criteria are we looking for? So we're counting up certain cells looking for male. So keep in mind where male and female are indicated on this sheet is in this column here. So the range that I am looking at is actually this range, because that's what's going to tell me male or female. So basically you highlight the range, and then notice in the syntax there's a comma, and then it's looking for the criteria. And the indicator that it's male is an M. The trick here is to put this in quotation marks, since this isn't a number. It's actually text, and I need to put it in quotes to tell Excel it's text. So basically I'm saying look in this range for the letter M and count those up. If I hit enter, there are 8, and if I just look at a glance, that looks about right. How many students are female? Same formula, count if, highlight that range, comma, and then instead of an M, I'm going to do an F in quotation marks. And there are 10, which makes sense. 10 plus 8 is 18. So what is the total height of all male students in inches and all female students? So now we're not just counting, but it's asking for a total. So we're adding things up, or sum. So that tells me I need the sum function, but I have some criteria here. So then I'm looking for sum if. So I only want to add up things if this criteria is met. So in this one, I'm going to start typing equals sum, but I'm going to choose sum if. Now, what is the total height of all male students? Look at this syntax here. This is going to be a three-part function. So now we get a little bit more intermediate. First, I have to tell it what range to look for what criteria. So first I have to say, look in this range for male students, and then add up this. So the adding part comes at the end. First I have to tell it to look for male students. So where does it say male students? It says it right here in this range. Then I do a comma, and then I say look for male, that's the criteria, comma, and then it's saying what sum do you want to add up? And I'm looking for total height of all male students, so I'm saying then add up, wherever there's an M over here, add up the inches, the corresponding one over here. And so these two components have to match. I can't have like a bigger range on one and a smaller range on the other. So here we have the range, the criteria, and then what you're adding up. And this is where people sometimes get confused. They sort of flip these. You'll know right away if it works or it doesn't work if you've got it wrong, and just try flipping them. So 555. I'm going to do the same thing for female. I'm actually just going to copy this formula. But I'm going to go up here then in my copied formula, and instead, notice what happens when I copied it. It copied it relative. So this is something I kind of did on purpose here to show you guys, like, oh, whoops, since I moved down one cell here, it moved down one cell there. So I actually need to fix this. So I thought I could copy it, but it turns out I can't. Whoops. I want to look for this range, look for female, and then add up that range and close that out. So 645 total for all female. Average height of all male and female, as you might guess, we just did sum if. We could do average if. And so again, this works the same way. First, look for male in this range. Oops, just got that last one there. I want to do H6 to H23, comma, look for male, and then average out the height. Close that out. Same thing for female, average if, highlight those, comma, female, and whoops, I missed. And I can just go back, notice how I'm going up in here and editing this. I missed that last one. So I changed that to, and then it's lit up so I can tell what I've got. And then I'm gonna average out whatever's there. And so then what's the average height of all students? Now you're thinking you're an average if, you're in that mode. This is actually just a basic average function where I average out the height. Who's taller, men or women? I'm actually going to skip this one. This is the if function. I'm going to come back to that next week. Tallest and shortest. Let's just do those. Is max for the tallest, and I can go from the bottom up as well. Notice that's what I'm doing here. And then min is equals the min function. And there we go. So I have the tallest, shortest, and again, this is for the if function, and line 33, we'll come back to that. Okay, the last thing I want to go over is cell referencing. So we saw when we've been copying and pasting, things have been copying relative. You can also make things copy what's called absolute, where they don't copy relative. And there's definitely scenarios, and we'll get into this more in the coming weeks, where you'd want to do this. We're just going to start really simple with this week, just so you start to get a taste for this. There's a little bit of homework on it, and then next week we'll start to build on this a little bit more. So on this sheet, cell referencing 1. What we're doing here, this is just a fake little entertainment budget. I guess it's old school since we're still renting DVDs and CDs. What we're saying, our company, our entertainment cable company has come to us and said, you're going to get a discount of 7% since you're a preferred customer. And we want to figure out what that means our new amount would be. Now this is really simple. We could do these individually pretty quickly, but we are actually, pretend this is a big long list. We have our new discount over here in this cell. So I want to calculate this number times that number to get my new amount. And then I want to be able to copy it down. So first, let's say I just did this really basic. I said, okay, that's the current amount times the discount. And I hit enter. Okay, now notice, first of all, this is just the discount amount. I want to know what the new amount is. So I actually have to go into this formula. Whoops, and this is the discount amount, but I want to subtract the original amount minus the discount. And notice I put that in parentheses because I wanted to calculate the discount first and then subtract that from that current amount. Hit enter. That sort of makes sense. We saw it was like a $3 discount. Now we're down to $49. So I'm like, great, let's say I want to copy this down. So I just go like this, and I copy it, and I'm like, woohoo, I'm done. But then wait a second. I look at this. These numbers are all the exact same, and I've got the little green arrows. Formula refers to empty cells. That's weird. Let's click in this and see what happened. So if I click in here, notice, okay, yeah, it looked at the $15.96 per DVD, but then since Excel copies relative cell referencing, it moved with me. Notice this F4 came with me. I'm going to hit escape. If I look at this one, notice how it's, instead of looking at 7%, it's over here looking at this empty cell. So it actually didn't calculate anything. So this is a scenario where I actually want to stay put on this 7%, but have everything else move. And so what we're going to do is do an absolute cell reference, meaning it stays put, or I like to say we freeze it so it doesn't move. So I'm going to go back to this original formula. And this is really simple. The way to do this, F3 is this is the one I want to stay put. So all I do is click in this F3 and I can either type, it's kind of funny looking, you type $ in front of the F and the 3. That makes sure the F, the column, stays frozen and the row stays frozen. The shortcut is to also, if you were to just click in there and you could do Command T and it'll make $ in there. So for now we're just going to do it basic absolute cell reference with $ in front of each. I hit enter. So far it looks the same. But now if I copy this, and it'll just overwrite what I did before, so I don't need to go in and delete those. This looks much better. 29 to 27, 32 to 29. Kind of makes sense. So now it's copied at relative. It's copied at absolute. If I click in this to double check, took 1596 times 7%. So it stayed up on that cell, and that's exactly what I want. I'm going to go ahead and then format those, and voila. So let's do this one more time. This last sheet, this is the Columbia Cafe again. This is a basic, we're going to figure sales tax on these items. So someone has made a big order, they're doing a big catering order. So they've ordered the burgers, so on and so forth, at all these different quantities. So I want to figure out the sales tax on each of these. So first, I'm just going to do a basic formula here where I have to calculate out how much each item cost and then get the sales tax on this. So they ordered 10 burgers at $4.25 times 10 times the sales tax. So we're going to do like $42.50 times 7.5%. And so we end up with this $3.81. Now, again, you guys might be thinking ahead. Let's say I copy that down. Oh, I end up with zeros. Whoops, that doesn't look right. And that's because, oh sure, it went down to fries, but then it kept going. It's going down to this cell and this cell and this cell. This is the normal default relative cell referencing. I want to actually freeze this sales tax number. So I'm going to go back into my original formula, and I'm just going to click around that H4 and do Command T. Or I could type the $, and notice that becomes an absolute cell reference, meaning I'm freezing this sales tax number so it does not move down, but I do want the rest of it to move down. Hit enter, and then I copy and paste that down. So to get the total, I'm just going to do another basic formula. I need to know, again, the burger's price times the quantity, and now I'm going to add in the sales tax. Now here, I want everything to move with me. I want it to move to the fries. I want everything to move. So I don't need to make anything absolute. I want it all to come with me. Format that down. And then I'm going to add these up with just a quick sum function. Perfect. And I'm going to just format those to currency. and format that one. So you have very similar instructions on your homework to follow through there. And then the rest of it, there's a couple different ones, but you basically can look back through these tutorials and figure those out and then apply those to that homework.